Hey, and welcome back to Hardscape Canada. This is video number 1 in the Perfect Patio series. Today we're going to look at site prep. This is the original design. We actually made a few modifications, and this is what we're going for. So we're actually going to be reusing some classic Holland pavers and changing the pattern into a herringbone and making a patio perfect for enjoying those summer evenings. As we go through this video series, make sure you ask lots of questions. I'm here to give you as much experience as possible. So to start, I'm going to set up my small laser. It's going to create that nice horizontal level plane that we can use to measure up and down from to figure out all of our existing elements in the landscape. I really like to do this just for an initial idea as to where the existing heights are going. That'll start to inform me as to the natural flow of water and just make sure that we're on the right track as far as our initial heights, and we can start to begin some excavation. So this mini excavator is actually a little bigger than I would typically use, and it was left by the contractor that did the perimeter drain on this project, so they allowed me to use it for a day or two. And at first I just want to make sure there's no overhead obstructions, just take a general look at my path of travel and my swinging radius as well. And I'm going to fire it up and get in there and start to clear some brush out and try to use the machine to my full advantage to make sure that it's actually just making my life a little bit easier. If you're familiar with these types of machines, they're pretty simple, looks like lots of controls. Basically you're just lifting the front blade up and down, you're traveling forward, backward, and we're going to pivot and articulate the actual boom and bucket as well. I decided to leave the tooth bucket on just so that I could actually scrape and kind of pull some existing plant material out, getting rid of some old landscape ties hiding in there as well. I'm just going to give it all a fresh start, right? I want to clear out all that kind of grubby material that we don't really need. So I decided on a height, 6 inches step rise from the door threshold, and I'm actually going to set the laser precisely to that. So with most rotary lasers, you're kind of working off of just a general height set up by the tripod. But with this small laser, it's kind of cool. I'm actually able to set it up to the exact height that I need to stop any sort of discrepancies in my calculating in between heights. Makes it dead easy. I usually like to set up my string lines for that finished height as well. And I'm just going to do a quick schematic here showing my depths of material. So paving stone, sand, road base, and that gives me my total depth of excavation. So I wanted to show you the general layout for our drainage. We're going to slope the patio directly away from the building, then everything you see in blue there is actually going to be a drainage channel as well as a dry creek bed look with some river rock. So I'm going to clear out from the edges where the excavator can't reach, and I'm also going to dig a couple test holes and get myself some visual points right down to the depth that I need, so that I don't have to hop in and out, because I'm doing this myself, of the machine too much to get it all scraped down to the level that I desire. So down to that bottom of our excavation height that I mapped out on the sheet of plywood. And because it's not a huge patio, I can go within an inch or two of extra depth to make sure I'm going to reach my slope. So I was just sort of eyeballing that as I went with the machine, making sure that I'm an extra 2 inches lower on the far side where we're going to be sloping to, and I can make up any discrepancies with the road base after, as long as it's not too shallow, right? So for the rest of this site prep, I need to install some drainage, so I'm going to install a perf system. It's going to be kind of a hidden drain along the side of the patio. For every additional sort of perf section, I want to make sure that I include a clean out at the end. The idea being that if roots ever infiltrated this system, or it was ever clogged, or ever needed repairs, I'd be able to get a scope, or basically just be able to see where the endpoint is for this system, so that I could clear it out and redo it and kind of assess what's going on. So a really good idea to install a clean out at the end of each section. So just making sure it's glued really well. You can see I have my heights close by on that rebar stake. That gives me a good idea of the finished height I want for the clean out. I'm just going to set it up, and this is all going to get wrapped in fabric just to keep that sort of fine material from getting into the pipe very quickly, and also just sort of as a weed barrier as well. So making sure that I glue the components all together so that they don't get moved around, especially I'm going to be compacting close by. And just a nice removable lid there for the cleaner. So once my pipe is laid out, obviously I had to touch up a trench to make sure it was sloped appropriately as well. I can start to lay out my fabric. I have a 3-foot wide roll, so I'm just going to use the whole width, and that way I can fold over and create a nice sort of sock filled with some 3/4 drain. I prefer to use the angular drain rock for this, because I'm actually going to be compacting really close to it for the road base prep. So that's how I get the sort of hidden drainage right on the edge of the patio. That way I'm able to compact right up to it, and then basically my curb is going to be right beside it, so that water flowing off the patio is going to roll right into that drainage layer. So now with our laser set up to that exact height, we're going to use it to actually establish a step. So I'm able to measure down from the laser to get to the top of the cinder block, and judging the thickness of the actual paver that we're going to put on the surface of it later, and a little bit of mortar. So I'm going to square it up to the door, get this first piece centered, and then it's just simply setting these on a road base. So I hand tamped a road base, about 4 inches thick layer, and then I'm using a type S mason mix to actually set the stones into, the cinder block. And making sure that it's all bonded really nicely together, and try to be as accurate as possible. This is also a really good point to think about lights. So I'm not going to include any lights in this step, but if you were, at this point you want to be probably trenching in some conduit, getting it set into the block if necessary, and really thinking about any sleeving. So all that stuff that needs to happen before the road base goes in. And just doing some fine tuning here, making sure it's really precise, just to make it really simple for me to bond those pavers onto later. So other things that we need to think of are irrigation and lighting, right? So making sure that those are in place. And even if there was a hot tub going on here or something like that, armored cable, all that kind of stuff. So just double checking that the pavers are going to work. And that's our site prep. So now we can move on to some road base. See you in the next video.